Your cat just froze mid-lick, mid-stretch, mid-purr. You said one specific word, and something shifted in their brain in under a second. Not because they heard a sound, because they understood what that word means. And the last word on this list, scientists say most owners use it completely wrong. And it may be silently unraveling the trust your cat has built in you. For years, you need to hear this before you say it again. Welcome to our place, the channel that goes deep into your cat's mind, so you can understand them better than you ever thought possible. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. You don't want to miss what's coming in this video. Picture this. You're across the room. Your cat is on the windowsill, seemingly half asleep. You say their name just once quietly, and one ear swivels toward you immediately. Their eyes open slowly. Their gaze finds yours. You didn't shout. You didn't rattle a treat container. You just said their name. That's not luck. That is the result of a deeply wired cognitive process that scientists have spent years trying to fully understand for a long time. The debate in feline cognition research was whether cats were actually processing words, the specific sounds, the distinct patterns of syllables, or whether they were simply reacting to tone, context, and the familiar music of your voice. The answer, it turns out, is both. And the research that's emerged in the last decade is nothing short of extraordinary. Researchers at the University of Tokyo, led by Dr. Atsuko Sito, conducted a series of experiments to study exactly what happens inside a cat's brain when spoken to by their human. What they found surprised the scientific community. Cats can distinguish their own name from other similar sounding words, even when spoken by a stranger, even when embedded in a string of other words. The cat's ears would pivot, their head would turn, their pupils would shift. Something was happening beneath the surface. But here's where it gets really interesting. Cats don't just react to their name like any random sound. A follow-up study published in Scientific Reports found that cats can pick their own name out of a continuous stream of irrelevant speech, even when it's buried in the middle of a sentence and spoken with zero emotion or special emphasis. Their brains are filtering your speech in real time, scanning for the signal. That means this concerns me. Think about what that means. While you're on a phone call, while you're talking to someone else in the room, while the TV is on, your cat is listening passively, constantly processing. And the moment your cat's name surfaces, in that stream of noise, something clicks. So why then does your cat sometimes ignore you when you call their name? This is where it gets fascinating, and where cats are actually far more sophisticated than most people give them credit for. Cats learn their name the same way they learn everything else, through association. Every single time you said their name, and something desirable followed food. A chin scratch, the opening of a sunny window. Their brain quietly logged it. Every time you said their name, and something they didn't enjoy followed. A trip to the vet being picked up by a stranger. The carrier coming out. That got logged too. Over hundreds and hundreds of repetitions. Your cat has built an internal ledger of what your voice, calling their name, tends to predict. This is not aloofness. This is intelligence. Your cat isn't broken. When they don't come, they're calculating, is the expected outcome worth the effort of interrupting my sunbeam? If the answer their memory gives them is usually yes, they respond. If the answer is, sometimes it leads to something I'd rather avoid, they remain perfectly still, as if they didn't hear a thing. Feline behavior researcher Dr. Michael Delgado has described cats as having a social intelligence. That is radically underestimated, because it doesn't look like canine obedience. That means the cat hearing its name isn't reacting like a motion sensor triggered by sound. It's making a cost-benefit analysis based on experience. And here is something that might genuinely change the way you interact with your cat. From this day forward, if you have ever called your cat's name repeatedly when they weren't responding, over and over, each call getting slightly more frustrated, you are not reinforcing the name. You are training them that ignoring it is an option. In feline cognition, each unanswered call followed by no consequence teaches the cat that not responding is a perfectly acceptable choice. The cats that respond most reliably to their name are the ones whose owners have made that name worth responding to almost every single time, without exception. Their name means something good is about to happen, and that prediction has rarely let them down. If you're watching this and you're realizing your cat's name has lost some of its power, don't worry, this is fixable. And by the time we get to the last word on this list, you're going to understand exactly why rebuilding that bond is so much more achievable than you think. But first, the word that most owners use every single day, and almost everyone uses wrong. 2, they know what no means. Your cat is about to scratch the arm of your new couch, or knock a glass off the counter. You see it happening in slow motion, and before you can even think, the word comes out sharp, sudden, and they freeze. They look at you. Sometimes they retract the paw. Sometimes they simply walk away with exaggerated dignity. So clearly they got it right. Clearly the word works. Yes and no. And the difference between those two answers might be the most important thing you learn today. Cats absolutely learn what no means over time. In fact, research comparing feline auditory processing to that of other domesticated species has consistently found that cats respond to the sharp, sudden sound of a corrective word in a remarkably predictable way. The brain detects an abrupt shift in sound, something short, clipped, and tonally different from normal speech, and it triggers an interruption response. The behavior pauses attention, redirects. But here's the thing. That's not the same as understanding. The rule behind the word, your cat stopping, when you say no, does not necessarily mean they've understood why they should stop or what they should do instead. What they've learned is that when that sharp sound appears, something unpleasant is either happening or about to happen. The behavior is suppressed, not replaced. This is where the science gets uncomfortable for a lot of cat owners. Research published in the Journal of Feline Medicine and Surgery examining stress responses in domestic cats found that cats exposed to frequent negative vocal interactions showed measurably higher baseline stress. They displayed more hiding behaviors, excessive grooming displacement activities, avoidance of eye contact with the owner, and in environmental interaction tests. Essentially tests that measure whether a cat feels secure or threatened in their territory. The cats exposed to the most frequent sharp corrections trended toward the insecure end of the scale. What does that mean in practical terms? Cats who hear no too often, too loudly, or in moments of high emotion start building a different kind of association, not between the unwanted behavior and the correction, but between you and the feeling of unease. Research from the University of Lincoln, which analyzed owner-cat interaction patterns, found that the longer and more frequently a harsh, reproachful tone was used, the more likely the cat was to avoid spontaneous interaction with that owner. They were learning unpredictability, and unpredictability is one of the most anxiety-producing experiences a territorial animal can have. Here is the pattern that emerges when no is overused. The cat stops for a moment. You think the message landed? But there's been no redirection. No alternative behavior offered. So 60 seconds later, the same paw reaches for the couch. You say no again? The cycle repeats over weeks and months. The correction loses its impact because it's become background noise, while simultaneously, the cat is becoming slightly more wary around you without either of you fully realizing it. The owners who get this right, the ones whose cats respond to a single, calm interruption and genuinely redirect, tend to use the word short, neutral tone, not explosive frustration. One time, not four. And critically, they follow it immediately with something the cat can do instead. Scratch this post instead of the couch. Yes, good. That sequence teaches. That sequence builds the neural pathway between the interruption and the desired outcome. Your cat doesn't need you to be louder. They need you to be clearer. And if you're starting to rethink the way you talk to your cat, stay with this video, because the next word is the one that reveals just how deeply your cat has been paying attention to you. All along, this one is going to surprise you. 3, they know what treat means. Have you ever opened a can of tuna in a completely different room with the water running to mask the sound, and suddenly your cat is winding between your ankles before you've even lifted the lid fully? Has your cat ever appeared in the kitchen before you've touched their food bowl, before you've made any sound that a human would register as food related? Have you ever had to start spelling it out, TREAT, just to have a normal conversation without summoning a furry negotiator? That is not a coincidence. And it's not your cat being manipulative. It is one of the most elegant demonstrations of how a cat's brain builds predictive chains. And it tells us something profound about the depth of vocabulary your cat has developed without a single formal lesson. What happens in your cat's brain when they hear treat or any word they've deeply associated with a peak experience is a process called classical conditioning. It's the same mechanism that Ivan Pavlov documented. over a century ago when he discovered that animals could be conditioned to anticipate food at the sound of a specific signal. The brain learns that a specific cue reliably predicts a specific outcome. Eventually, the signal alone is enough to trigger the full, anticipatory response. But here's what makes your cat's relationship with the word treat so much more sophisticated than that famous experiment. Research conducted at Kyoto University, published in Animal Cognition, found that cats trained to respond to verbal cues responded appropriately to words like food and play. Regardless of who was speaking the word, a family member, a stranger, a recording, the cats were responding to the word itself. Not to body language, not to contextual cues, not to who was speaking. The meaning had become fully attached to the sound pattern. This was a landmark finding, because for years, skeptics argued that cats weren't really understanding words. They were just reading environmental cues. The sound of the can opener, so they come running. You walk toward the kitchen, so they follow. The Kyoto University research specifically designed experiments to eliminate those explanations. And what they found is that, at least for high-value words, tied to things cats care deeply about, the word itself carries the meaning. A 2023 study in Applied Animal Behavior Science went even further. Researchers surveyed over 3,200 cat owners about which words their cats responded to most strongly, and then observed behavioral responses. When those words were spoken, the results were clear. Words tied to food, treats, and meal routines produced the most dramatic and immediate responses. The ears pivoted, the eyes dilated. The body was already preparing for the experience. The anticipation was neurologically real. And now think about how your cat learned all of this. You never sat them down for a vocabulary lesson. You simply use it consistently, reliably, always followed by the same amazing experience. And over hundreds of repetitions, their brain did the rest. It built the connection. It stored the prediction. It started firing the moment the sound pattern appeared. But here's the part that really matters, and the part that most owners completely overlook. Your cat hasn't just learned the word. They've learned the entire chain of events surrounding it. The word is just the most obvious trigger in a network of signals your cat assembled on their own. The specific crinkle of the treat bag, which they can distinguish from all other crinkles. The sound of your footsteps when you're heading toward the pantry versus toward the bathroom. The time of day you usually offer a snack. Cats are not just listening to your words. They are building a complete, predictive model of your daily behavior. And the word is the clearest, most reliable signal in that model, which means they've been paying far closer attention to you than you ever realized. And if that thought is making you wonder what else they've been picking up on, good. Because the next word on this list goes somewhere most owners never expect. Keep watching. Here is a test you can run right now. Find your partner, your roommate, a family member, whoever lives with you and your cat. Go to a separate room so the person is out of sight. Then say that person's name out loud in a normal conversational tone. Watch what your cat does. If your cat turns toward the door, that person usually enters through. Glances at the spot where they normally sit, or shows any sign of recognition. You just witnessed something that animal cognition researchers have found genuinely remarkable. Cats who live in multi-person households learn the names of the people they share a home with, not just the sounds, the identities behind them. The mechanism behind this is the same one that powers name recognition itself. Pure associative learning, powered by repetition and attention. Every time you said someone's name, and that person appeared, moved, or interacted with the cat, your cat's brain was making a note over dozens and eventually hundreds of repetitions. The name became a reliable signal, predicting that specific individual's presence or involvement. A 2022 study from Kyoto University, published in Scientific Reports, specifically tested whether cats could match human names to faces and found evidence that they can. Cats living in larger households with more consistent name usage perform better at the matching task. The underlying architecture of how they built those associations is the same mechanism that allows them to map their entire social environment. That dad means one specific person, and grandma means another. The real surprise isn't that cats can do this. It's how quietly they do it, and how little formal teaching is involved. Most owners never consciously try to teach their cat anyone's name. The learning happens in the background, through pure observation. Your cat watches, listens, and tracks patterns. When the same sound reliably predicts the same person, the connection forms. And this matters enormously for how you interact with your cat. Day to day, if you say a family member's name in a tense, worried, or upset voice, your cat doesn't just hear a name. They hear a name connected to an emotional signal. Over time, repeated often enough, the name of a particular person can start carrying an emotional charge. For your cat, positive or negative, based entirely on the tone and context in which it was most frequently used. Your cat is not passively receiving sound. They are actively building a social map of your household. They know who lives there. They know something about the emotional patterns surrounding each person. And they are using all of that to navigate a world they can't speak words back into, which brings us to the final word on this list. And I need you to pay close attention here, because this one is different from everything we've talked about so far. This isn't about food or interruption, or learned association with daily events. This one is about something much harder to put into words. This one is about what your cat has been quietly doing with all the time you spent together. 5. They know what their unique sound is of all the signals a cat can learn. This one carries the most weight, and it's not because of what it means. In training manuals, or what it's called in behavior guides, it's because of what your cat experiences every single time they hear it. If you've been doing it right, the sound means nothing to a kitten the first time they hear it. It is a completely arbitrary noise, indistinguishable from any other. But something happens. Over the months and years of living alongside a human, Something accumulates. And by the time, your cat is looking at you from across the room. Ears forward, tail up with a slight curve at the tip. And then choosing to walk toward you. That choice is the result of something deep. Research into feline cognition has consistently shown that cats are uniquely attuned to their specific human's voice. Unlike dogs who respond readily to most friendly humans, cats filter their social responses through a much tighter lens. Their domestication, which is far more recent than the dogs, and largely self-selected, appears to have shaped a different kind of bond. One based on mutual tolerance and earned trust rather than pack hierarchy. Cats are the only domesticated species that domesticated themselves. They chose to live near humans because it benefited them. And that origin story matters because it means their trust is never automatic. It is always built. The sound you make specifically for your cat, the greeting chirp, the special name, the kissy noise, whatever unique vocal signature you have developed just for them, for a cat who has heard it thousands of times, always followed by something warm, safe, or gentle, doesn't just trigger a recognition response. It triggers a relational response. The brain has built a rich predictive model. That sound predicts positive attention from you. And positive attention from you has consistently meant safety. A 2020 study from the University of Paris, Nanterre, using behavioral observation of cat-human pairs, found that cats showed visible signs of comfort, ear relaxation, slow blinking approach behavior, when their owners used a specific vocal register, often called cat-directed speech, the higher-pitched, softer tone that humans naturally adopt with cats. The sound isn't just registered as noise. It generates an expectation for warmth. That expectation, built over years, is a representation of connection, of you. The research on cats and human speech has found something else that matters here. Cats don't just respond to any high-pitched voice. They respond specifically to their owner's voice when it's directed at them. Playback studies have shown that cats can distinguish their owner's voice from a stranger's voice, and they can tell when their owner is speaking to them versus speaking to another human. The brain is not just acknowledging a sound. It is registering, this is for me, and this is what makes your special sound for your cat. Unlike any other word on this list, when you make that sound and your cat chooses to respond, not because you're holding food, not because they need something, but simply because you called, they are making a choice based on their entire history with you. Every slow blink you exchanged, every time you respected their space. And then every evening when they chose to sit nearby, every time approaching you resulted in something that felt safe. Cats who have experienced consistent positive interactions, where their special sound has only predicted good outcomes, show dramatically different social responsiveness than cats, whose trust has been eroded by unpredictability, rough handling, or punishment. The difference isn't just behavioral. The difference is emotional. One cat is choosing toward you because their whole learned experience says that's where calm lives. The other cat, staying distant. Because their experience says the outcome is unclear. The research makes the path forward unmistakable. Make your special sound for your cat the most reliably positive signal in your shared vocabulary. Every single time they respond to it, regardless of how long it took, regardless of whether you're slightly disappointed. Reward it with gentleness, not performatively, because your cat doesn't just hear the sound. They hear the meaning behind how you make it. They process your emotional state through your voice pitch and tempo. And when the sound consistently matches safety, the connection deepens. When your cat hears your special sound and chooses to walk toward you, that moment is not a trick. That moment is earned trust. Every experience they have had with you, after hearing that sound, has built into something they want to be near. So here is what we've learned. Your cat knows their name not as a label, but as a signal of what usually follows. And they've calculated whether you're worth responding to, based on hundreds of small moments you may have forgotten. Your cat knows. No, but overuse it sharply and often enough. And you won't teach them boundaries. You'll teach them that your presence is unpredictable. And that unpredictability is one of the most destabilizing experiences a territorial animal can have. Your cat knows. Treat. They built the entire web of associations around it, without a single lesson from you. And their entire body physically prepares when they hear it. Your cat knows the names of the people they live with. They've mapped your household. They know who everyone is. And they've attached emotional tones to those names based on how you've said them. And your cat knows your special sound for them. And when they choose to respond to it, they are not performing a command. They are telling you something about every experience they have ever had with you. You have been talking to your cat this whole time. They have been listening, and now you know what they've been hearing. If this changed the way you think about your cat, share this video with someone who loves theirs, and subscribe to us, because this is just the beginning of what's inside your cat's head.